Hello and welcome to another traditional edition of Sutton Impact Family Style. I'm Jason.
I'm Bill. I'm glad to be back this week. And I want to start off with our business moment, and it's an interesting business moment because I want to talk about Maryland football decisions.
Yes.
And first of all, I, like everybody else, was shocked. And it seemed like, Jason and I talked offline, and it seemed like this was a Roger Goodell type decision. That it wasn't really vetted out. They had taken the temperature of the pulse of the affected people. And I thought when they interviewed the deceased student's father, and he said, I felt I was kicked in the face and spit on. I think that set up the storm.
Yeah.
That was the one thing. And then when Scott Van Pelt, some Maryland alumni, talked about not being proud, and everybody took him to task. There was no support for this at all. And I remember thinking on the Urban Meyer thing, was mixed.
Yeah.
You know, there was a lot of criticism about Urban Meyer, but there was still a lot of support for Urban Meyer. I didn't see any support at all for this guy in Maryland, none. And for them to make that decision, I just didn't see that coming.
No, and not that talent, I know it technically does, but not that we should ever value talent over a person. But Urban Meyer at least is a legendary, probably, Hall of Fame college football coach. And again, like you said, not that Twitter and social media should be like, the gauge of everything, but you said the Urban Meyer, there was a healthy debate, and on the Talking Head show, a very healthy debate. This seemed pretty clear cut. No.
So that's why, to me, it became a business decision. The donors were going to start giving money, that sponsors were going to drop off, the ticket sales were going to get down. There was a lot of money at stake here. And unfortunately, money, to me, made them do the right thing.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Unfortunately.
And again, if you're an alum of that school, it becomes an embarrassment to you.
Yeah, it's been, really, really odd that they could have made that decision. And look how long they took to make the decision.
And that's the crazy thing, too.
They put the guy on administrative leave in August, and they announced a decision October the 30th. That tells me they took a lot of time to come to the conclusion that they came to, which was a bad conclusion.
I was about to say, and that's a bad conclusion right there. So who knows what they were doing. And it seems, again, like, I know other people have said this before, but like it seems like there should be at every professional sports organization and every probably college campus just, a sports ombudsman of common sense. Someone that could be like, so what is what do we do here?
Yeah.
Just a common sense person to be like,
you have all these analysts that they can run these logarithms and figure it out.
Yeah, and sometimes you don't even need logarithms. You just be like, look, this is not where we want to be. Let's get out of this as quickly as possible. Like, we don't need to, there shouldn't even be a discussion. We're done. But
yeah,
somehow not.
Well, not wanting to get political, but if Trump would have said you should rehire the coach, he probably would have got rehired.
Who knows what would have happened on that one?
Yeah.
That would have just been a mess. I guess just because it just happened and it is the World Series, I guess we have to congratulate Boston again on yet another championship.
You know what? I liked Cora as a coach.
I thought he was really good manager. Yes.
A really good manager. I thought he was articulate. I thought he wasn't cocky, wasn't egomaniac. I thought his players loved him. I thought that was the deciding factor.
And again, obviously, neither of us were in the room, and this is judging based on what I read. But it seems like the Dodgers manager was strictly an analytics guy, which is why, you struck out 2 people, you look like you're on fire, it's okay, I'm going to pull you out because analytics tell me that you shouldn't pitch to the next guy. Where Cora seemed like he did what you're supposed to do with analytics, which is have the data, understand the data, but not be a slave to the data. Because it seemed like he let some decisions go.
That's a very good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Cora used it as a tool, not a decision maker. It was something that helped him make decisions, but it wasn't the decision.
No, and the Dodgers guy clearly seems like he's just analytics decision, and it's like, it's a tool, and it should be instituted, but not to that level of because it almost becomes like in Hollywood they have this formula now for movies where it's like, well, I put, this director with this actor with this already property, so if it didn't work, it's not my fault. And that's almost like the analytics. I think that's almost half the appeal of analytics. It's like, Well, the numbers told me to do this. I did what the numbers said, which on some level becomes, well, then why do I need a manager? I can just have a kid with a computer. I would hire you to make the decisions.
Congratulations to Boston. What did we say, 5-4? So 9, 10, 11.
They have 11 championships in 2000. All 4 of their sports teams have won a championship, and obviously the Patriots and the Red Sox have won multiple championships. So
Yeah.
I would like to propose that Boston is not allowed to compete in sports for the next 3 seasons in any sport.
I think that's a good rule.
Seems fair.
I support it.
And I'm sure all our Boston friends would agree.
And since the first rankings came out for the college football playoff, and they'll be changed next week as LSU plays Alabama.
Yes.
So we'll see who moves up. It's either going to be Michigan or Georgia or Oklahoma, I guess, one of those 3. But I'm talking a little bit about UCF, and as you and I were talking offline, rightly or wrongly, I think that the Power 5 guys, it's just like, it's a club.
Yeah.
And they decide who gets in, who doesn't get in, and they make sure who they don't want in doesn't get in. But I think all the antics about UCF declaring themselves national champions and buying rings and everything, I think that really wore on the Power 5 guys. And I think it showed up in the vote. And fairly, I have to point out that UCF has not played a team with a winning record yet. Their schedule is backloaded, where they play USF, Cincinnati, and they already played Temple. UCF, they still have Cincinnati and USF left, I believe.
I believe. But
and they don't play Houston, who they would play in, assuming UCF wins the East, they'll play Houston for the conference championship.
yes.
So their big games aren't going to be till the end, but it would be enough to get them over to be a top 4 anyhow.
No, because Alabama
Win all the
can.
games.
Yeah, Alabama could lose 2 games and they would still be a top 4 team. Because
Probably.
that's the way that system seems to work. But as I pointed out, one of the reasons UCF has trouble scheduling anybody now is because the big teams don't want to play them. There's nothing to gain because they have a good chance of losing to UCF based on their, the way they've been over the last 4 or 5 years. And
Well, what did you think about White's comment that he thought he could beat 90% of the teams?
last year he proved it.
No, he beat a 2-loss Auburn team.
Who beat?
Or 3-loss Auburn team.
He beat a team that, they had 3 losses after they lost, but they had beat both the teams in the national championship game, including Alabama. So,
Yeah.
They beat everybody put out in front of them, including the team that won the national. I know you can't say because Team A beat Team B, that Team A would also beat C if B beats all that, but they beat the team that beat the team last year, and they went undefeated. They haven't lost a game in over 2 years.
No, I agree. I don't think they should be 12. I think they should be higher than 12, but I wouldn't put them in top.
Right, and they also started, despite having that record, winning all those things, they started at like 24, and as you've seen, it's so difficult to move up. And then the Power 5...
I think 24 was, again, probably a result of all the national championship stuff.
Probably, but at the same time, the hypocrisy of, we're Alabama, we beat 10 top 25 teams when they automatically, despite not knowing who's good and who's bad, all the preseason teams are the teams that they play on their schedule. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We beat all these SEC teams who were ranked in the top 25. That gives us all these top 25 wins. And it's
it'd be a fun topic for us the rest of the year.
Yeah.
But LSU is only a 17-point underdog Saturday night.
Only.
At home.
At home.
Which, to be fair, is the smallest amount of points Alabama's been favored all year.
And to be fair, LSU has never fared very well for the most part historically against Alabama.
But it's at LSU, and it's a night game. So, unfortunately, I'm going to be in England, so I won't see it, but I'll follow it with interest.
Yes. And this Alabama team is putting up historic offensive numbers for a Nick Saban team, which normally plays really good defense, and now they've got 2 at quarterback, and they do look really strong. And obviously, if you judge by players in the NFL, a lot of SEC teams do put a lot of players in the NFL. So,
Well, let's switch to the NFL for a minute. I watched the Buffalo-New England game on Monday night.
Yeah.
I know, rooting against just because I hate the Patriots, but the Buffalo Bills defense really, really played hard.
Yeah.
And really, really played well. And I have to tell you,
At this point, yes. I don't know. It's what's weird about the Bills is you drafted a guy in Josh. Who's mine? Josh? No, who did they draft? Why can't I remember his name?
Josh Allen.
Josh Allen.
And he got hurt.
And he got hurt. But you drafted a guy who was considered a very raw prospect. Who, if any of the prospects needed to sit for a year or two, it was him. And you had a perfectly serviceable quarterback in Tyrod Taylor. And I know a third-round pick is a third-round pick, and that's fantastic. But it seemed like you had a guy that would have been an excellent mentor and, you know, somebody to keep the ship straight and not embarrass your football team. So I always thought that was bizarre, but they traded him.
I thought that team would be up in arms over the way that guy played. It was horrible.
Yeah.
Speaking of horrible, obviously Landry Jones is now with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yes, this is our Steeler moment, but Landry Jones, and I actually wrote to, what's his face, Ed Bouchette of the Post-Gazette. I actually emailed him a question. And I asked him, because he's been a vehement 3-year defender of Landry Jones, and Landry Jones being a quality backup. And of course, during the beginning of the season, people were like, well, nobody signed him, he must suck. But I've never thought he sucked. And as I talked to Boucher, I was like, you know, to your point, I'm like, as I look at the quarterbacks of Nate Peterman and Blake Bortles and all these guys, I'm like, is there a reason Landry Jones, under 30, 6 years, you know, under Roethlisberger, in Pittsburgh, steady situation, and is a decent quarterback when he's been out there. How is he not on the team? Like, if he's your quarterback at Jacksonville, based on what we saw in Pittsburgh, they probably have won a couple more games.
I would say that's true.
Because he can hit an open receiver, and he knows how to read a defense. He doesn't have the physical skills of Bortles, running the ball or arm strength, but I think a team with that defense and that running game, he could have helped them out quite a bit. So
do you think he'll start this week?
I think it's tough to come in and start when I think whoever started.
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
I mean, playbooks being what they are, yeah. But I can see him starting at some point down the line. For sure.
Well, all I hope this week is that since it's Steeler-Ravens week, that neither team has a crippling injury again after this game like we always have.
It's true. I would say that the Steelers-Ravens rivalry has become a much more civil affair.
But it's still hard-hitting.
It's still hard-hitting, but it's not like...
It's not dirty.
It's not dirty. Like, the Bengals games are really uncomfortable to watch at this point.
Yeah.
But the Ravens, I think, you know, especially as all the big guys have, you know, moved on, the Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Palomalu, you know, Harrison, all the stars of those things at Hines Ward. I mean, they've all just spent so many years in their mutual respect society that they've kind of just, you know, it's become like a nice, a hard-hitting rivalry, but a clean one, I guess.
Okay. Let's move to the NBA. I just got back from Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
It is an issue.
Jimmy Butler saga. Because Jimmy Butler played his ass off the other night, looked really good, helped them win the game. And now he says he's too sore to play tonight against Utah.
Yes.
But he will play Friday night in Golden State. So, you know, he's in control here. It's just a crazy thing. He's in total control. He's doing whatever he wants. And the coach is also the general manager. And he doesn't want to trade him unless he gets current talent that can play right now back. And that's not going to happen.
No.
All you ever get during the season for a headache is another headache.
Exactly.
And that's what you're going to get. So that's not going to work. But it's just really, it's sad. It's so disruptive to the team and everything like that. And, you know, it's on the owner. And it's on the owner because the owner's the only one who can push the buttons on the coach / general manager. Because if you're the coach and you don't want to trade your player, and they're calling the general manager, who's also you, and offering you the deals, and you don't want to take the deals, what's your alternative?
Yeah. And I think you've invested a lot of money in Towns and Wiggins, and that coach doesn't work with him, and Jimmy Butler doesn't work with him. And I think just to save them, you know, just sort of like with the Browns situation, to go back to the NFL for a second, I think you could see if you're the owner that keeping Hugh Jackson and Todd Haley around is doing nothing to help Baker Mayfield and those young players.
I think Jimmy Haslam stepped in and did the right thing.
And he was like, you know what? I'm like, no coach is better than these two idiots. I don't want them to ruin my good players, my future assets. And I think with Butler around and Thibodeau around, it's like, not that they're bad, but they're bad for that team right now. And I think you want to get them as far away from Karl Anthony Towns as possible. I don't know if Wiggins is salvageable ever. I mean, I think he is what he is, and people are just gonna have to live with that. He may have all the physical gifts in the world, but he doesn't have whatever that is.
Well, they're wearing throwback uniforms tomorrow night, and guess who they brought back to wear the throwback uniform?
KG.
No, I don't think you'll get this.
Oh. Wally Zerbiak.
No.
Then I'm out.
Pooh Richardson.
Pooh Richardson?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
I met him last night at a restaurant. He's a really nice guy, and he's really excited to be back wearing the uniform.
Cool. That's very cool. He's just...
And then tomorrow, the Timberwolves are having a press conference at Paisley Park to announce their Prince-themed city uniform that they will wear on November 16th.
Yeah, that's leaked online. That looks pretty cool.
It's really cool.
That's a good look. I like that look.
Yeah.
And in other NBA news, obviously, we know who's at the top, but the Rockets lost again last night. I know Harden didn't play, but they have one win this year.
They're 1-6, right?
1-6. Like, I know the Thunder are 2-5, but Russ was the first 2 weeks of the season, and the Thunder are the Thunder. And I love Russ to death, but I mean, they're I don't think they got better this year. I mean, you could argue they got rid of Melo, which was better, but they lost. They still don't have Roberson, and they still don't have. They don't feel like they're built. I feel like Paul George is a good compliment for him, but you have to build the Thunder like Philadelphia used to build around Iverson. Just, maybe Steven Adams, and then like just shooters, so the Russ can just drive and kick. Because they have nobody that can shoot from the outside, and that is what it is. But the Rockets are the surprising 1-6 team, I think.
Yeah, very surprising.
Because, they lost their defense. They added Melo. That's why they're desperately trying to get Jimmy Butler and not give up any of the pieces they have now. But because the Rockets are, more so than I think any other team, they're in win now. Because Chris Paul is 34. And he started showing signs a little bit of slowing down last year at times of being a little more injured.
And that's why if I'm the Timberwolves, I'm jumping on the 4 draft picks.
I am too, because he's 34. He's going to make, I think, $38 million the next 4 years or something like that because of the extension he signed. And again, you take the 4 picks, you can use them as assets, because again, I think
they don't have to be picks. That's exactly right. They can turn into players at some point in time, maybe later on in the year.
Yeah. Maybe at some point you can use him to dump Wiggins.
Or the player or the picks become better picks.
Or the picks become those because it's every other year, those last 2 picks that the Rockets have could end up being fantastic picks. Presumably if you give them Jimmy Butler this year, whatever pick it is, whether it's this year or next year, is probably not going to be the best pick. But those last 3 could all end up being great picks. That's like with Boston. It becomes like the Boston, New Jersey Nets thing. They gave up all those players. They gave up KG, Pierce to the Nets for all those picks. And after one good year with the Nets, like all those picks became gold because the Nets bottomed out. They had no draft picks and no talent. I know you obviously want to get a player along with those 4 picks other than Marquise Chris. But you're not going to. And I don't think you're going to get a better offer from anybody else.
Or if you get somebody, all you're going to do is get a guy that's probably not playing, that's got a little bit, maybe he's probably making more money than he should be.
Yeah.
To balance out the cap thing, that's all.
Exactly. And like I said, I think if I'm Glenn Taylor, I'm going to try to get rid of Thibodeau and Butler, take the 4 picks and move forward and hope I can do something with it. Now, you and I were talking... Well, no, let's stick with basketball. Well, we got one more sports thing because you wanted to talk about everyone's favorite debate.
That's right. I want to talk about LeBron and Michael.
Yes.
So now that I've seen them so many times.
Yes, in person, too.
In person, I've decided that Michael is the all-time player only because LeBron might have better physical skills than he does. Michael had much more heart and just was vicious. So I watched LeBron playing the other night, the Lakers and the Timberwolves. And I watched him kind of be a facilitator and just, kind of stand around and watch. And I just remember, watching Michael Jordan, if he was playing a game like that, he would find somebody in the Timberwolves that he wanted to embarrass and just embarrass him. And he would go up, Michael would have went off for 40 or 50 in that game. And just, probably been mad because
know people
So
are.
that's my pick on this.
Yeah, and I think you can look at a number of times in LeBron's career, and I know some people are like, well, he's smart, he doesn't want to save his body, but like that Boston series from about 6 or 7 years ago, where he clearly just gave up. And you could argue last year in the finals that after the J.R. Smith just brain fart, he kind of gave up. And I know people are like, yeah, we knew they were going to lose, and it's like, no, but like Jordan would never think that. Jordan could be down 0-3, down 50 points at halftime, and he's still going,
Yeah.
He's like, we're still going to get
That's my
this.
feeling on that.
Yeah. And I know the analytics people can't shut up enough about how LeBron's plus minus is better than Jordan's plus minus, therefore he's the better player. But, we're not going to get to the analytics thing anymore because it's just silly.
I was just going to say, I'm doing it strictly on the eye test.
Yeah.
I've seen him play enough games now. There's in my mind, there's no comparison.
No.
And some people say this because you're 67, and they will say that that's for me. I just know what I think.
Yeah. And I would say one last sports thing, just because I do listen to a lot of sports podcasts. I am getting a little nervous that basketball sports talk is slowly morphing into baseball sports talk, which is very alienating to people that aren't into numbers. Like, baseball sports talk has gotten to the point where you can't have a sports argument. Somebody's like, nope, he's not the better player. His WAR was this. The other guy's WAR was this. You lose. And a lot of NBA podcasting radio, not all of it, but a lot of it, obviously not the Chuck and Kenny and Charles and, KG and Area 51 and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of the mainstream sort of other podcasts are getting very much into, nothing but it sounds like all you hear, it sounds like a broken record. I feel like all I hear is 3-point percentage, 3-point percentage, 3-point percentage. And I don't want to see basketball go down that road because I don't think it's good for the sport as far, But that's my little mini soapbox. So there we go.
All right. All right, so I want to tell people that the best movie I've seen all year is Bad Night at the El Royale. And I just loved it. I love the acting. I love the story. I love the way it was filmed. I love the setting. I like the premise. That was phenomenal. I would give it 10 out of 10.
Wow. That is one I was really looking forward to seeing it. I was supposed to go see it, but plans fell through, and now I think it's already gone. But the second it appears on iTunes, that's a purchase, and I'm going to watch it right away. So.
Yeah, I think it's just really, really a great movie. And I saw the original, I saw the Halloween, the new version of Halloween 4 years later. And, it is what it is. It's Halloween.
I know. I actually watched, in the spirit of October, I watched a lot of horror movies this year. And I watched the original Halloween. And it's weird because, I know I watched it, obviously years before. But you can see, it's the same thing with bands. Like, if you hear the band that starts something first, then you can hear it in other people's music, and it's like, wow. But if you hear the other bands first and you go back and hear, you're like, oh, that kind of sucked. And the original Halloween is not... I didn't feel like it was a great movie.
No, it was an average movie.
It was an average movie, but it was one of the...
Introduced the killer that couldn't be killed. That's what it was. That was
Right.
Friday the 13th around the same time. And it was the first time at the end of the movie, the bad guy, the monster, whatever you want to call him, doesn't get killed.
Yeah. And it was still good. It's just like... I think if you've never seen Halloween and you've watched it now for the first time, the original, I don't know if you're going to like it, is is my point.
Yeah.
Because I feel like you've seen it so many times and you've seen it, iterated on and changed and tweaked and done so much better since then. But obviously the original always should deserve its props. But I don't think it holds up as a classic film for people that, like some movies you watch and it's like, that's just amazing still. But I don't think that's one of them. So I watched...
I got food moments this week.
I'll bang out my entertainment really quick then. This one's probably the Netflix original show, Castlevania. I just finished season 2. It is an animated show, and it is an animated show that involves vampires. So, I'll put those caveats out there. But it has fantastic writing and voice acting, and it's got a really great story. So if you're a fan of animation, or if you can talk, because I know a lot of people they're automatically turned off at the thought of animation, but it's incredibly skilled to draw all that way. And like I said, the voice acting is phenomenal, the writing is great, and the stories, it's as good as a vampire sort of series as you're going to find. Keep in mind, the first season is only 4 episodes, and it's really just a table setter. It was just sort of like, here's the characters, here's the set pieces, but nothing really happens. But the second season just moves. And then I watched a movie that I wasn't sure I would like called Upgrade, which came out last year. And it's a really fun action sci-fi movie. It's only 90 minutes long, which is a nice, sweet, quick little watch. And I wish it was a little deeper into the sci-fi, but it's deep enough that, I think you'll find more. It's more than just your typical action movie, is what I'm going to say. And I don't want to say too much about it because I'd rather you get to watch it and see how it unfolds. So.
Okay. So, Upgrade on your Netflix.
That
Find Bad Night for El Royale.
Yeah, actually, I don't think Upgrade was on Netflix. It's on something, though, but worth watching.
All right, my food moment. Babe's Chicken Dinner House.
Okay.
In Frisco, Texas. Now, it's a chain. There's like 4 of them. But I got to tell you, it's like family style. You order fried chicken, you order chicken tenders, you order hickory smoked chicken, or you order chicken fried steak. You get mashed potatoes and gravy, homemade biscuits, cream corn, and green beans. And it's awesome. And I had the chicken fried steak, and I could cut it with a fork. And I posted that for people on Twitter. So if you saw my Twitter, I posted that dinner. And then last night, I ate at David Fima's restaurant in Minneapolis. David Fima is this famous chef that oversees all the cooking in the Target Center as well. He's got this amazing restaurant in a building from 1914. It's kind of like the Rat Pack meets Art Deco. And I had a long bone beef short rib that was to die for.
Okay.
And I put a picture of that on Twitter as well. But always is nice when people can go and when you know somebody that knows chef. And I actually put some pictures of Chef Fima on my Twitter account as well.
Nice. I can honestly say I did not have any food moments, so nothing new.
I'll go in England next week. I don't know if I have a food moment there either.
I think England's probably got some pretty good food hidden that way for you. I mean, it's probably not all fish and chips. Mom likes fish and chips though, so she'll be happy.
Mom's having fish and chips on Friday night, and I am having a steak and ale pie. So we'll see how that goes.
It's true. And next week we will come. We were a little bit late this week, but we're coming out. We're going to be posting on a Wednesday as opposed to our normal Sunday or Monday. But next week we should be back normal time. And next week we have a special guest. Your niece, my cousin Kaylee.
And Kaylee works for YouTube, right?
I believe she does. Yes.
And she is a pop culture expert.
Indeed, she is.
So it might be a little less sport and a little more entertainment pop culture, which would be nice for our guests.
Yeah. And we'll try to, bring some more guests and all those sorts of things. So, as we say every time, but it's not a broken record because it really is important. Please go to iTunes and rate us. 5 stars would be preferred. Have your friends rate us. Have your friends listen to us. And if you can contribute to Patreon and become a Patreon family member, it really helps us a lot. Podcasting is not quite free, so it does help. And obviously, if we can get a little more Patreon, we can do a little more to make the show a little technically more advanced, hopefully.
But we always appreciate your support and always appreciate your interest.
Indeed. And again, if you have any questions or things you want to hear on the show, please email or, contact him through, Twitter, Instagram, all those sorts of situations. And I think that's about it.
Everybody enjoy your steak. They're calling college football this weekend Statement Saturday because all the top teams have big games. So we'll see how Statement Saturday goes down.
And I realize everybody's phone reminds them of this, but this is Fallback Sunday. So plan ahead.
Big home run hitter played for the San Francisco Giants on the same teams with Willie Mays. Great big left-handed first baseman. So R.I.P. Willie.
Rest in peace. So until next week, we are out.